Sleeping Beauty. The palace was festive. Soft light filled the rooms, and warm voices echoed through the halls. In one quiet chamber, the queen sat beside a cradle and could not take her eyes off the tiny baby sleeping inside. The baby slept peacefully, her mouth was slightly open, and her chest rose and fell in a slow, steady rhythm. "Look at her," the queen whispered. "She's so small." The king stepped closer and leaned over the cradle. "And so quiet," he said softly, "as if she's listening." The queen smiled. "I hope she always sleeps like this," she said. "So calm, so safe." The door opened gently and the fairies entered. Their dresses rustled like soft leaves as they moved across the floor. One by one, they gathered around the cradle, smiling. "We have brought her gifts," said the first fairy. "She will grow wise and thoughtful." Another fairy nodded. "She will grow kind." "And brave," added a third. The queen placed her hand on the cradle. "That is all I wish for her," she said. The fairies stayed a little while longer. One adjusted the blanket, another gently touched the baby's hair. The baby stirred, made a tiny sound, and relaxed again. "She will grow quickly," said one fairy. "Children like her always do." The king closed the window so no cold air could enter. The room became warm and still again. Time passed. The baby grew into a toddler. She laughed when she heard her mother's voice. She reached for everything around her: flowers, ribbons, sunlight on the wall. Soon the cradle was too small, and it was replaced with a little bed. The girl grew. She ran through the garden, stopping at every flower. She asked questions about everything. "Why is this leaf bigger?" Sometimes she fell. Sometimes she got dirty, but she always stood up and kept going. The queen watched her from the window, smiling. The king often joined her games. "Slow down," he would laugh. "Can you catch me?" the girl would call, running even faster. Everyone in the palace knew her. She greeted the servants. She spoke with the gardeners. She loved standing in the kitchen, watching pots bubble and listening to spoons clink. "What's in that pot?" she would ask. The days were full and bright. One afternoon, while running through the corridors, the girl noticed something new. A small door. She had never seen it open before. It was narrow and led upward. She stopped. She hesitated. Then she pushed it. The stairs were steep and quiet. The air felt cooler. At the top was a small room with a single window and an old wooden spindle. The girl walked closer. "What is this?" she whispered. She reached out and touched it. In that same moment, her finger pricked. Not badly, just enough to surprise her. She pulled her hand back. The world seemed to slow down. The sounds faded. The light softened. Her eyelids grew heavy. She sat down on the floor. Then she lay back. When they found her, she was sleeping deeply. The queen lifted her into her arms, trembling. The king stood beside them, silent, not knowing what to say. The palace grew quiet. The girl was placed in her bed. Her favorite doll was laid beside her. The doors were gently closed. And time began to move differently. Outside, the garden grew wild. Ivy crept up the walls. Flowers bloomed and faded. Birds nested where no one walked anymore. People spoke softly about the sleeping princess. "She will wake," some said. Inside the room, everything stayed the same. The bed was clean. The curtains were opened every morning. The queen came every day, even as her hair slowly turned silver. She sat beside the bed and spoke quietly. "I'm here," she would say. "I'm not going anywhere." The king came often too. He stood by the door, then stepped closer. "She sleeps like a child," he would whisper. "Our child." Days passed, then weeks, then years. The palace clock continued to tick, but it felt as if no one was listening. Nature did not stop. Only the girl slept. And somewhere beyond the walls, the world waited. After the princess fell asleep, the palace slowly changed. Not all at once. At first, people simply walked more quietly. Servants closed doors more gently. Laughter became softer, as if no one wanted to disturb the sleeping girl. The queen spent most of her days beside the bed. Sometimes she spoke to her daughter. Sometimes she just held her hand and listened to her breathing. "I'm here," she would whisper. "I'm always here." The princess did not wake, but her face stayed peaceful as if she were dreaming something kind. The king came many times a day. He would stop at the door, take a deep breath, and then step closer. "She sleeps so calmly," he would say, "as if she trusts the world to wait." Outside, the garden kept growing. Ivy climbed higher along the walls. Flowers bloomed, bees visited them, birds sang in the mornings. Nature did not hurry. Only the princess slept. Years passed slowly. The people in the village told stories. Some said the princess would wake when the right moment came. Others said the palace itself was sleeping along with her. Children who had once played in the garden grew older. New children were born. Seasons changed again and again. The palace grew quieter but not empty. Every morning, the curtains in the princess's room were opened. Fresh air was let in. A new flower was placed beside her bed. The queen's hair turned silver, but she did not stop coming. "There is a new tree in the garden," she would tell her daughter. The princess did not open her eyes, but she seemed to listen. One day, a young man arrived at the edge of the forest near the palace. He was not from that land. He had heard the stories and had walked a long way. People warned him. "No one wakes her," they said. The young man nodded. "I just want to see," he said. He reached the palace and stopped. The walls were almost hidden by ivy. The windows were still visible, shining softly. "Someone lives here," he said quietly. The gate was heavy, but it opened. Inside, the air was cool. It smelled of stone, flowers, and thyme. He walked slowly, not because he was afraid, but because he wanted to notice everything. Paintings hung on the walls. Faces from the past watched him silently. "This was once full of life," he whispered. The farther he went, the quieter it became. At last, he found the stairs. They led upward. He climbed carefully. At the end of the corridor was a door slightly open. He knocked softly. No answer. He pushed the door and stepped inside. The room was filled with light. There was a bed, and on the bed lay the princess. The young man stopped. He did not move right away. He simply looked. The princess looked as if she had just fallen asleep after a long day. Her hair was neat. Her hands rested calmly. "You must be her," he said softly. He walked closer and sat on the chair. He did not touch her. He only stayed. "Everyone talks about you," he said, "but no one knows you." The room was silent. Only the curtain moved gently. After a moment, the young man reached out and touched her hand. It was warm. "You're here," he said, and smiled. In that moment, something changed. Her fingers moved slightly. The young man froze. Her eyes stayed closed, but her breathing shifted as if she were turning in her sleep. "Are you dreaming?" he whispered. Her eyelids trembled. Slowly, very slowly, her eyes opened. "Just a little, then more." She looked at him. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice quiet and rough as if unused. The young man stood. "I'm here," he said. "I just came." The princess sat up slowly. She looked around the room. "It's bright," she said. "It's morning," he answered. She touched the bed. "I was sleeping," she said, as if testing the idea. "Yes," he said gently, "for a long time." She placed her feet on the floor. She felt the cool stone and smiled. "The floor is real," she said. He offered his hand. She took it. "I can stand," she said. "I didn't forget." They stepped into the corridor together, and the palace held its breath. The moment the princess stepped into the corridor, everything changed. At first, it was very quiet. Then someone dropped a basket. Another person covered their mouth with their hand. "She's awake," someone whispered. The princess looked around. The corridor felt long, brighter than before. People stood still, staring at her as if she were something new and very fragile. The young man stayed beside her, but he did not lead her. He simply walked with her. At the end of the corridor, the queen appeared. She had been running. When she saw her daughter standing there, awake, breathing, looking around with curious eyes, she stopped. For a moment, she could not speak. Then she stepped forward and hugged her. "I'm here," the princess said softly. "I came back." The queen held her tightly as if she might disappear again. "I never left," she whispered. The king came next. He did not rush. He walked slowly, carefully, and stood in front of his daughter. "You're awake," he said, as if he needed to hear the words. The princess smiled. "Yes," she said, "and everything feels new." The palace woke up. Windows opened. Doors were pushed wide. Sunlight flowed into rooms that had been quiet for years. In the garden, people gathered. Ivy still covered the walls, but no one minded. Flowers bent gently in the breeze. The princess stepped outside. The sun dazzled her for a moment. "How green it is," she said. The queen smiled. "It was always green," she answered. "You were just sleeping." The princess laughed softly. "Then I missed a lot," she said. "But I'm ready now." The days that followed were full. Not loud, not rushed, but full. The princess learned what had changed. She listened to stories. She met people she had never seen before and people who had been waiting for her all along. Some were older. She asked many questions. "Why is the tree so tall now?" The queen answered when she could. The king answered when he could. Sometimes no one answered at all, and that was all right. The princess learned to walk slowly through the garden. At first she grew tired quickly and had to sit down. "That's okay," her mother said. "You don't have to hurry." Sometimes the princess wanted to be alone. She would sit by the window or walk quietly among the trees. Sometimes she wanted company, and the young man was often there. He did not always speak. Sometimes he only walked beside her. One evening, the princess sat on the balcony and looked up at the sky. "I dreamed," she said quietly, "for a very long time." The young man stood nearby. "And now?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "Now I'm looking," she said, and listening. The stars shone softly. The wind moved her hair. "There will be more days," she said, "and more mornings." "Yes," he said, "and I will be here," she added. The princess began to take part in life again. She helped in the garden. She listened to the cooks. She learned which rooms caught the morning light and which stayed cool in the afternoon. She was not in a hurry to be everything at once. The palace was no longer quiet, but it was calm. One morning, as she walked through the halls, she stopped. "I don't want to sleep through my days anymore," she said to her parents. The king nodded. "You won't," he said. "We'll walk them with you." And so the palace learned to breathe again, not loudly, not suddenly, but steadily. The princess was no longer only the sleeping girl from stories. She was someone who noticed the sound of footsteps. And at night, when the palace lights grew softer and the garden rested, the princess lay down and closed her eyes. Not because she was lost to sleep, but because she was ready to rest. And the world, patient and quiet, rested with her.